so much for being here and listening to me from Paracas, Peru. My presentation is about the phenomena of elongated skulls which have been found all over the world on every continent that has been occupied by humanity except Antarctica as far as we know. These are three-dimensional depictions which have been done by an artist called Marcia K. Moore, mainly of Paracas elongated skulls. She's an expert on the facial features of Native American people, and these are her renditions. The strange thing is I took up this study because no archaeologist or anthropologist was looking at the phenomenon of elongated skulls of the Paracas culture. They are studying the textiles and ceramics, yet for some reason they are completely dismissing this phenomenon. Brian, this is probably the most famous elongated skull in the world. It is from Paracas, Peru, from a very specific cemetery called Glozel. These skulls have been labeled Nephilim or Anunnaki or God knows what else, but all we really know is that this culture died out about 2,000 years ago and the cranial deformation was only done by members of the royal family. What you see in this picture, the top left, top right, middle left, and lower right skulls are all from Thongos, a 20-minute drive from where I am seated right now. People tend to automatically jump to Egypt when you talk about elongated skulls, especially the time period of the Armorna family as in Akhenaten, Nefertiti, and Tutankhamun. On the left is a stone depiction of Meriteten, who was one of the daughters. On the right is Nefertiti of the 18th dynasty. The thing is, as far as I can tell, no actual skeleton remains have been found which equate the elongated skulls of the art forms, as in murals and sculptures, with the actual remains. The skeleton or mummy on the right is believed to be a member of the Armorna family and has probably been identified as Nefertiti herself as far as I know. He has never been actually found. The only one we do know of course, who may not even been a son, is Tutankhamun. And here we have Tutankhamun himself as portrayed by the National Geographic Society and the Egyptian Council of Antiquities, and if you can't trust them in terms of their interpretations, what we do know is that he does have a skull that is not exactly normal. His cerebellum is larger than normal, but he is in no way what we would necessarily call a cone head. This is an actual cat skin of Tutankhamun. You can see the sort of pinkish color of his skull and it does look quite odd, I would say, but having seen him in person in the Valley of Kings, I'm not sure this is an exact copy of what his skull actually looked like. The one above is reputed to be Akhenaten, but again, Akhenaten has not been found. It's more likely that he was not only killed, but his body was cut up into several pieces and cast in several directions. Such was the hatred of the Amen priesthood for he and his family. Brian, the question is, why would he have his family portrayed, especially his children, with these huge skulls? There must be something to this story. Did they look like this, or did their actual ancestors of their bloodline look like that, as in Osiris perhaps? Brian, the phenomenon of cranial deformation was all over the planet, most commonly 2,000 years ago. One of the last groups to fashion their heads in this way were the Abatu people of the Congo, who claimed their ancestry from Sudan, and from there, they claimed that their ancient ancestors came from Egypt. So there's a possible link there with the Egyptians. Up until the 1950s or 1960s, the royal children had their heads bound to create this amazing looking shape. It was again recently they did this, however the government and missionaries banned the practice, so it is no longer practiced by these people. In Egypt, in April 2015, on a cruise, there were members of a family of Nubia who were sitting at the next table and two of their children had elongated skulls. We saw the phenomenon as early as less than a year ago. Brian, so you can see the graceful look of the mom, the two women who was a person of cranial deformation here. Also, when we go to the Nuwatu, which is in Melanesia, the same phenomenon occurred up until recently. Again, it was by missionaries and the government. In their oral tradition, these people claimed ancestry from Egypt. They claimed that they sailed from Egypt through the Red Sea probably about 2,000 plus years ago. This is another example of one of the children from the Vanuatu area of Melanesia. Some of you will have heard of the skulls of Malta, which at one time were on display. There were at least 200 which were abnormal in shape. Rather than being vertically elongated, they were horizontal. The regular-looking skulls in general tend not to be on display. The reasoning behind that is unknown. Whether it's a cover-up or what, I am unsure, but that happens also in Peru and Bolivia and also other countries. Notice that the skull below only has one suture. Technically, every human being living today only has two sutures. You have a coronal suture and a sagittal suture which divides the parietal plate in behind, creating a T shape. Here, there is only one. In the areas of the Middle East and Russia, this is a Russian example of ancient cranial deformation amongst the royalty. Again, most common in the time from about 100 AD to 400 AD, and the influence moved from this region into Europe around the same time. Brian, Stephen Adler the Hun and his people performed cranial deformation. So again you have the royal bloodline altering the shape of their skulls to make themselves look different from the common folk. The question is, why would you have this phenomenon happening on all continents more or less around this same time frame about 2,000 years ago? This is in Austria, and this could actually be influenced from the east moving westward. This woman died approximately 400 AD and was a member of some ancient royal family of that area. The elongated skulls of Europe have been found in Germany and France and England and many other locations. I'm presently trying to map exactly where they were and at what time frame. Brian, so when we go to Central America, amongst the Maya people, we have cranial deformation. The problem with this area is the soil is very acidic, so very few elongated skulls have been found because the soil itself tends to break down the calcium carbonate, whereas in a place like Peru, especially on the coast, it's extreme desert, which is perfect for preserving bone material and even textiles. The mysterious Olmec culture. Again, the soil is very acidic, so very few examples can be accessed. Brian, there was a collection of at least 30 extremely elongated skulls at Tiwanaku itself, but that collection was removed about 5 years ago. The display was papered over, and we were very fortunate that the new open Tiwanaku Museum in La Paz, they have 3 elongated skulls on display. This was also found at Tiwanaku. I inquired about it, and he in fact said yes, this is in our collection. So I'm very hopeful I will be able to document this one at some point next year. Notice the size of the head to the torso. This is an extreme example of cranial deformation, for example, of a non-Homo sapiens. This was a baby, possibly 2 years old, that was found in the Sacred Valley of Peru in a collection of a tomb robber. It is most likely in the National Collection, and I'm negotiating at present to have access to what they call the skull room, which has 10,000 Peruvian skulls. Notice the golden fingernails. Some of this gets so weird. In Cusco, of course. This is in the basement of what is called the Coricancha, which was a sacred center of the Cusco and the Inca. These skulls you and I saw along with our group. They are listed as being from 1532, however, since they have not been carbon-14 tested, it's simply a guess. We are actively undergoing a process of carbon-14 DNA testing ancient skulls of Peru, which is an incredibly complicated process. Most archaeologists state that this is how cranial deformation was done. This example is from the United States, from literally what are called the Flathead Indians. Other contraptions were used as well in order to flatten the skull. What we'll get into is the fact that this kind of deformation has a tendency of flattening the skull, and we'll see examples that would have been very difficult to have been done using simplistic processes such as this. This is how the Peruvians did their cranial deformation. The Paracas culture, those who lived in many other areas, performed this process. So predominantly you find what are called cone head skulls in Peru and Bolivia. Interestingly enough, wherever you find the site, if there is a museum there, you always find elongated skulls. There's a strong correlation between megalithic sites and elongated skulls. Brian, and even until recently, the people of the jungle close to Cusco performed this process. But then you wind up with very intriguing examples such as this one. This was sketched in, I believe, 1842. It was a fetus believed to be 8 months old and stillborn. Notice the size of the skull in relation to the body and notice the teeth. An 8-month-old fetus does not have teeth, and this is one of the characteristics that we're tracking when we are looking for the differences between the cranial deformation Homo sapiens sapiens and something else. Again, it's in artwork that we see depictions, and there has to be some realistic component to it for there to be this artistry in many different parts of the world. This again is of course the Amarna period in Egypt, but in Peru as well. This little artifact which was found near Tiwanaku. The central figure is the creator god Viracocha. Flanking him on the left and right are two women of greater stature and even greater head shape. Unless they have incredibly fancy beehive hair designs, we are looking at a very intriguing phenomenon of this area, which of course also relates to very mysteriously constructions both at Pumapunku and Tiwanaku. And again, this also is from Tiwanaku, and both the last figure you saw and this one and the next one please, have been authenticated by Senior Juan Navarro of the Paralcas Museum as being authentic. So these are minimum 1,000 to 2,000 plus years old found at Tiwanaku and Pumapunku. Notice either the hunchback or backpack, which Eric von Anakin would call a spacesuit, but honestly, who knows? We'll need to get more samples to figure out what's going on with this. Brian, so my main focus has been in the Paracas area where I presently am, where you see the arrow. If you notice the road systems, those are the modern roads, but they also reflect that the modern roads were built on the ancient Inca road system, which in turn was built on a much older road system. If you travel from Paracas eastwards, you are traveling on the ancient road which connects you with Cusco. As you travel north and south of Cusco, you find many of the famous and not so famous megalithic structures are along these roads. At almost every single one of them I have found elongated skulls. So again, the correlation between ancient megalithic and elongated skulls. Brian, and this is what the Paralcas are believed to have looked like. We're talking about a Native American people who, at least in this depiction, resembled more somewhat like the rug merchant in India than someone who was Native American. Underneath that turban-like thing would be the elongated skull. So no serious academic is looking at this culture whatsoever, so I've put it upon myself to do it along with many different colleagues including Hugh and Andy and other people. This is a Paracas. This has been carbon-14 tested at being 2,000 to 2,100 years old. Notice the shape of the skull, but interestingly, notice the hair color. Initial testing showed that this individual had genetically red hair. Also the hair is curly or wavy and it is finer than Native American hair. Native Americans have black hair. This is not, most likely, not the result of oxidation or dyeing. Every elongated skull that has hair is still attached to it, from Paracas, is red. This again tells you the continuity of the color. It's not like the Scottish or Irish or Scandinavian red. It's a deep rich auburn, and so it's quite unique. So initial indications are that red hair originates in the Middle East. We are starting to draw a correlation between parts of the Middle East and the coast of Peru, but this could be where this bloodline came from originally. The Paracas covered quite a large area, not just the Paracas Peninsula which you see or even what this map shows. They covered an extensive area of very advanced agriculture going all the way eastwards into the highlands of Peru. Even archaeologists will admit that the famous astronaut, which is found in Nazca, where the lines end, was created by the Paracas people who lived there before the Nazca people. He is the most enigmatic because he is on the side of a mountain and he's obviously waving at somebody. Also, if you see the figure of a whale that is done by the Paracas culture. So the Paracas culture were doing drawings on the land thousands of years prior to the existence of the Nazca. This is a Nazca figure. You can't notice the difference in the basic design from one to the other. Nazca are much more geometric in shape. The Paracas were much more fanciful in what they did, and evidence is suggesting now that the Nazca culture invaded Paracas territory of 180 and wiped out the royal family. So that's why, amongst the Nazca, you have no elongated skulls and very little red hair. So I think the Nazca were warlike and annihilated the Paracas, terminated their bloodline 2,000 years ago with remnants going through the Nazca. The famous candelabra. This is the beginning of the so-called Nazca line system, which goes from Paracas in the northwest down to and through Nazca to the southeast. There's an area in between called Palpa, which contain about 1,000 geoglyphs and designs on the tops of mountains or mesas. The Nazca system is not just Nazca, it starts at the Pacific Ocean. The next landmass to the west is a little island called Easter Island. There you have these giant moa figures, and some of them still have these red things on their heads. Most archaeologists believe they represent the form of hat, but Hugh and I have been to Easter Island and I have asked the local people. They said that the ancient ancestors of Easter Island were red-haired people of great stature and that they originally had elongated skulls. The more that I travel around Peru, the more access I have to the collections of elongated skulls. Hugh and I were given exclusive access to the Eco-MI collection a couple of weeks ago, I think, and he noticed a number of very weird-looking skulls that are in there. One of the strangest being the top left-hand example, which put into isolation, and if you took a photograph, practically anyone would say that that's an alien. They were also experts in the art and science of trepanation or brain surgery 2,000 plus years ago. Most of the surgery was done either in the forehead or the back of the head or the top of the head. Some would say that this is a result of warfare, where some of them would get whacked in the head and the pressure would have to be released, but it is quite likely that the Paracas engaged in brain surgery in order to possibly trigger some of the glands like the pituitary and the pineal, to try to trigger some extraordinary capabilities of the mind which the ancestors may have actually had. This is an example. We have doctors with us on the trip with Hugh, and I said, "Is that a blow to the head?" They said no. That is a very successful trepanation where the bone was cut out and grew back. This person lived for years with this injury. Again, basically all human beings on the planet, at this present time, have a frontal plate and two parietal plates. Then we have the Paracas where, in some instances, we only have a coronal suture. We do not have the sagittal or parietal suture in existence. And here in close-up you can see that there is not even a remnant that was ever a suture there, and any medical professional who's looked at these are simply dumbfounded. They don't know what they are looking at. If you are looking at either side branch of humanity that died out or alien-human hybrids, this would be something that you would probably see, and see characteristics which don't fit the blueprint of Homo sapiens sapiens. This is another example. It's not that there is only one example. The most interesting of the elongated skulls always have a lack of the parietal or sagittal suture. This is the back of your head. That's the occipital plate below and then the parietal above. But the Paracas skulls and most of the elongated skulls have these two holes in the back of their head. They are usually parallel at that. Even medical professionals believe that what this could be is this is the way for blood and nerve flow to an elongated skull because of its greater size, shape, and in some cases volume. In close-up, you see these are not puncture wounds, these appear to be natural. So they would possibly be an evolutionary feature. then we have the paralpas. So I still don't understand why archaeologists are not looking at this phenomenon. Clearly you can see the difference between the last photograph and this one. And you see how complex this shape is. I find it very difficult to believe that this would be the result of some primitive binding technology involving a board and some string. This to me is so complex in design that I think we are looking at one of the last descendants of what could have been naturally born elongated skull human beings. The question is, how would your brains have functioned, because each cranial deformation, if you extend the shape of the brain, how does that affect the different centers of how they function with each other? How does contact between the left and right hemispheres function when the shape of the brain is so different? This is a classic example of that. I know those of you who have been with us on the Megalithic tours have seen. This is a skeleton called Waki, believed to have died 900 years ago. Waki's skull is the size of her torso. Unfortunately, she is the only example we've found so far, and the initial genetic tests show that she was female, but no doctor who's looked at this can figure out what's going on, because the fontanelle at the top of the head you can see is open, which is indicative of a child who is less than 2 years old, and yet the dentition is that of an 8 or 10-year-old. Recent x-rays of the skull have shown that no secondary teeth are coming in. So you either have a 2-year-old or a 9-year-old with permanent teeth, extremely big eye sockets, and a skull the size of its torso. This here shows you the size of Waki. This is Wenato, who is an caretaker. I've been given allowance by Savior Wenato to extract a bone sample of Waki for DNA testing. So those of you who are following the fundraising that we did, thank you so much. This is what Marcia Moore believes Waki looked like, very different from the child down the street. This is another one of her depictions of what she thinks Waki looked like, including the possibility she had red hair. He was able to find at least 25 characteristics of the star child skull which are not Homo sapiens sapien. Unfortunately, there's only one star child skull, and in order to do proper testing you would need 10 or more, but God bless Lloyd. So here's Lloyd with the star child skull. He unfortunately died almost a year ago, but I am carrying on some of his work in his memory because he was fascinated by the elongated skulls of Peru. But maybe there is a second one. Where's this? This is in the Paracas History Museum, which Hugh was able to videotape on our recent tour. So again, Senor Juan at the Paracas History Museum has said I can't take a bone sample and have this little individual DNA tested as well, and carbon-14 tested. This just shows you the very irregular nature of this skull, and it's fun to have doctors, nurses, and other medical professionals look at these because they can't explain them away in terms of known disease. They simply don't know what they are looking at. And this honestly is what Marcia Moore believes what this skull looked like if you put flesh on it. As strange as it looks, she's a very unbiased person, and she simply depicts what it is she believes that she can. She's doing all of this for free because she, like you, is intrigued with what's going on or what was going on in the past. These are the very first results of our geneticists in the United States, and as you can see, some sequences of the DNA of the paracas do not match anything known. They do not match 100% with any known haplotype, with any known human being, or any Neanderthals or Denisovan. So I'm looking at something that is very intriguing, and this is just the beginning of what we are getting into. One of Marcia's depictions of what she thinks the royal paracas looked like. Another example, no recreations have been done to my knowledge by other archaeologists, so that's why we're doing it, because we want to know what was going on 2,000 plus years ago on the coast of Peru and other parts of the world. This example was found at Pumupunku but not in Pumupunku itself, on the grounds of a restaurant just outside. This skull was unfortunately stolen soon after I took a photograph, but another skull similar to this example was taken by someone and sent to the United States, and the geneticists are as perplexed with that sample as he was with the samples that were sent from parakeet examples. That's Eli Marzulli, who actually was the man. He's an author who's in charge of doing the fundraising which has brought us $50,000 for DNA testing. We want no financing or funding from any government institution because we are doing it independently. We're going to do all of this with full cooperation and assistance from the Ministry of Culture of Peru and as well the Ministry of Culture of Bolivia to make it official. This is one we still have to find. We were driving from Lake Titicaca on the Megalithic tour. I spoke with our liaison Gustavo, who is our assistant on many of our tours. He told me how to get to this little island in, which you would not have heard of, that has a very tiny museum which has specimens such as this which were found in funeral towers. This shows you what is called the path of Viracocha, which Hugh knows very well about. This is where you find most of the megalithic works in Peru and Bolivia. Along this line you find a very high number of locations of elongated skulls. So the ancient works and the elongated skulls are interlinked somehow. We have to now work on timelines as to when they are made and by whom. I just found this drawing last week. This is from Biblios in Lebanon, so that's new to me. We are going to go, my wife and I, to Baalbek in March to document the incredible works there. This is a new lead as well. This is a new location in Bolivia that I am going to be exploring next year. Notice the shape of that skull. It's south of the Tiwanaku area, so there's always more to look at, and that's what makes this work very exciting. It's similar to the ones you might have saw in Mexico, but at a different location. Someone sent me this little skeleton with red hair in a museum in Germany. All we know is that it comes from Peru. Again, look at the color of the hair, the fineness and waviness of the hair, and the fact that the skull is the size of the torso. When we were near the island of the sun with Hugh, this is in a little tiny museum near the shore of Lake Titicaca. Brian, thank you so much all of you for coming. As you can see, depictions of the Amarna family, Akhenaten and Nefertiti. See how the hips are large? This could be the size needed to successfully birth an elongated skull infant with their large cranium. Akhenaten is male, but the male and female body is similar anyway till puberty when hormones are introduced. A lot of the depictions of possible elongated-like skull figures through cultures around the world are showing the reproductive organs. Even the Venus figures are commonly associated with fertility goddesses. This seems to be a symbolic representation of these beings having to do with reproduction or interspecies progenitor. Now, here are some other images. Frontiers of Anthropology. This blog is to incorporate discussions on lost continents, catastrophism, the origin of modern humans and the out-of-Africa theory, genetics and human diversity, the origin and spread of civilization and cultural diffusion across the face of the globe. Below are some Hun skulls. Huns were not originally Mongolians. They were Iranians and they regularly recruited and conquered native peoples into their ranks. The conquered peoples began deforming heads of their infants in the same way. In Europe, the Huns settled as far as Germany and Switzerland, and their graves in that period show that the Germans were also deforming the skulls in the same way. The period of conquest is thought to have been the reason white Germans were failed Huns during World War I. These are some Hun skulls. Recently several such skulls were discovered in Siberia. Artificially deformed skulls in the Hun tradition from around Tomsk, western Siberia. Woman with artificial cranial deformation from Africa south of the Sahara. In Africa, the trait does seem to have radiated outward from the region of the Sahara. Types of artificially deformed crania found in eastern United States from a recent article by Neumont. Many of the same styles of deforming the skulls of the infants also occur in South America. The skull illustrated at center top is undeformed and normal, shown for comparison.
here you have, you know, you shouldn't be recording this. No recording. Okay, so here we have other pieces. Again, we have a solar system. The sun is very clear here. We have a planet with an atmosphere. We have another planet here, and we've got an ascending ship here, another one down there, and then one inside the sun flare. As you will see in my conference, I'm going to show you the mathematics and the reason why it may be appropriate to think of the sun as a doorway to travel through our through our galaxy and even in our universe. And the ancient people always called it a doorway. So here, So here we see a UFO coming out of the sun. It's very specific.
Supposedly, there is something that is going to change in the sun.
Exactly what's going to change, I don't know, because suppose long time ago, all the Mayas, they knew exactly what's going to happen. But since it came here, the Spanish civilization, it destroyed many things about this information. For me, I can remember some parts, but it's difficult because there's no more information. Remember, they destroyed the stelas, they destroyed the codes, they destroyed many things. But
I know something about this because it's part of my education and tradition. But the complete information I don't know because they destroyed it.
Igen, az elmúlt 50 évben rengeteg új dolog került napvilágra. 250 piramis Kínában, 300 Peruban, 15 víz alatti város, a csendes óceán végén Japánban és Tajvan között, újabb piramisok Mexikóban és most Boszniában. Bizonyítékaink vannak arra, hogy a civilizáció nem Sumérral, Babilonnal, Akkáddal, Asszírral, Egyiptommal kezdődött 7000 évvel ezelőtt. Ezek csak az utolsó állomások, mert volt előttük egy még ősi. A boszniai piramisok, a japán víz alatti városok ehhez tartoznak. Meg kell tehát változtatnunk az emberiség történelméről alkotott felfogásunkat.
Milyen régi a boszniai nappiramis?
Van már néhány erre vonatkozó adatok. Boszniában a Szarajevói Egyetem laboratóriumában elemezték a piramist beborító földet. Több mint 12 000 évesre becsülik. Természetesen a piramist sokkal korábban építették. Ehhez képest az egyiptomi piramisok csak 4500 évesek. A mexikóiak 2200, a kínaiak 2000, a perúiak pedig 3000 évesek.
Milyen tudományos méréseket, vizsgálatokat végeztek el eddig?
A föld alatti alagútrendszert valamikor elöntötte az ár, és a járatokban egyfajta konglomerátum keletkezett, amiben egy kis fadarabot találtunk, melyet a leghíresebb európai laboratóriumokban vizsgáltattunk meg. A németországi Kiel laboratórium kutatója 31 000 évesre becsülte a fadarabot. Lengyelországban, Sziléziában a Glivicei laboratórium 34 000 évesre. Ez azt jelenti, hogy az alagútrendszert ennél is korábban építették, és azt, hogy a benne talált hatalmas kőtömböket is ennél régebben vitték oda. Tehát nagyon fejlett kultúrájú népek éltek itt a Balkán közepén. Mindezek tudatában elmondhatjuk, hogy két nagyon ősi kultúra fejlődött ki Európában. Egyik a mai Spanyolország területén, a másik a Balkán közepén.
És nekünk magyaroknak ez a kutatás?
Azt hiszem, hogy minden olyan magyarnak fontos egy piramisnak a megtalálása a Kárpát-medence szomszédságában, amiről eddig senki nem beszélt, és azt gondolták, hogy csak Amerikában, Afrikában, vagy esetleg Ázsiában található. A Kárpát-medence közvetlen közelében egy ilyen piramisnak a felpukkanása, illetve megállapítása, az megváltoztathatja az egész környéknek a történelmi helyzetét.
Amikor kint járt, mit talált?
Mutogatták a különféle feltárásokat, és az egyik képen lehetett látni egy követ, amin egy nyíl volt, amiről, mint rovásíró, azonnal megállapítottam, hogy a rovás C betű. Elkezdtem ezzel foglalkozni, és kérdeztem, hogy hol látható ez a jel, és mondták, hogy az alagútban. A Ravnyi alagútban, ami a nappiramisnak nevezett hegyoldalba vezet. Hát oda akkor be kellett menni, körülbelül egy ilyen 40-50-60 centi magas alagútban 200 métert, hogy eljussunk ahhoz a kőhöz, ahol ez a rovásjel megtalálható, mert akkor kiderült már a helyszínen, hogy ott nem csak egy jel van, hanem sokkal több is, és ami a legfontosabb, és ezt szeretném, hogyha meg is mutathatnám, a tatárlakai korong, amit Magyarországon nagyon sokan ismerek, pontosabban a Kárpát-medencei magyarság. Ennek a jobb alsó sarkában látható egy megfeszített íj, rajta pedig egy keresztbe helyezett nyílvessző. Ez igazából több megfejtés közül az egyik egy összevont rovás N betű és B betű. De most, amikor ezt megláttam azon a kövön, ami ott az alagúton 3 tonnás, akkor lényegében ez számomra azt jelentette, minthogyha én léptem volna elsőnek a holdra, mert megtalálni ezt a jelet egy piramisban, ez meghatározó lehet a jövőben, részben a magyarság, részben a rovásírás kutató társadalom részére, hiszen eddig tudomásom szerint nemzetközi szinten egyetlen piramisnál sem találtak ilyen jellegű rovásjeleket, főleg nem a tatárlakai korongon megtalálható egyik összevont rovásjelet. Hát ez késztetett arra, hogy aztán többször visszamenjek, és azóta 7-szer jártam a területen, folyamatosan a rovásjelek után kutatva elsősorban, és ennek köszönhetem, hogy miután feleségemmel, Fridi Klárával, rovásírás kutatóval küldtünk egy tanulmányt neki, végeredményben elfogadta a magyarországi látogatásra szóló meghívásunkat.
Klárához fordulnék. Ön, mint rovás szakértő, vagy kutató. Mit gondol a látott jelek alapján?
Inkább kutató és oktató vagyok, mint szakértő. Engem mindig érdekeltek a piramisok, de amikor a Gábor úgy jött haza, hogy rovásjeleket talált, akkor éreztem, hogy nekem is mindenképpen el kell oda menni, és meg kell nézni. És számomra ez azért volt egy kicsit természetes, hogy így mondjam, mert az a véleményem, az a felfogásom, hogy a magyaroknak ez az ősi írása rendkívül régi. Szerintem ezt a mi elődeink terjesztették el az egész eurázsiai térségben. Tehát nagyon sok párhuzamát találtam már meg így a kutatásaim során ennek az írásnak, és nagyon régi kultúrákban, nagyon régi műveltségekben, tehát valahogy természetesnek tűnt, hogy akkor a piramisban is megtaláljuk ezeket a jeleket, és azóta sikerült 22 darab a ma székely magyarnak nevezett rovásírás jelei közül azonosítani és megtalálni a piramisban lévő köveken, vagy a környékén lévő köveken, és ezek valódi régi benyomkodások inkább, ugyanis nagyon érdekesek ezek a kövek, olyanok, mint valami építőanyag maradékok, mint amikor megmarad egy cement vagy egy betonnak a még ilyen képlékeny állapotban lévő maradéka, és azt csak úgy lehajtják, és ez ilyen kenyér formában ott marad, és minthogyha ebben nyomkodták volna be ezeket a jeleket. Az az érdekes, hogy ezek nem állnak össze szóvá vagy mondattá, hanem inkább egy kicsit mesterjegyeknek tűnnek, vagy esetleg az építőknek a névjeleinek, ugyanis ezek csak egyes betűk.
Szemi Rozmanovics elmondta, hogy a vizsgálatok alapján ezek a piramisok 34 000 évesek is lehetnek. Akkor az ott talált rovásjelek ezek szerint ennél régebbiek?
Nem is mondunk olyan nagyon nagy dolgot ezzel, ugyanis körülbelül 2-3 éve fedeztem fel egy régi könyvben, hogy itt Bajóton találtak egy csontpálca véget, itt a Pilisben, Hillebrand Jenő az ásatása során az 1925-ös években, és 15-20 ezer éves bolygatatlan rétegben találta, és ezen a csontpálca végen is 6-7 rovásjelünk tisztán felismerhető, ugyanezek a jelek a piramisban is megtalálhatók. Tehát itt találtak már egy pálcavégen egy olyan írást, aminek bizonyára volt előzménye, hiszen nem hiszem, hogy az lett volna a legelső. Tehát egy 1000 éves előzményt mindenképpen ennek is tulajdoníthatunk, tehát akkor már ezt már majdnem megközelítjük a piramisnak a korát, és valószínű, hogy ha több ilyen feltárás lenne, akkor még több jelet találnánk. Tehát ez a 34 000 év, ez nem annyira hihetetlen az írás szempontjából.
Ha Gimbutas, korábban Maria Gimbutas régésznő ma élne, akkor a Tóros Vincsa műveltséget, ez vannak a határt és egy kicsit kitolta volna Bosznia felé, tehát azt jelenti, hogy ez a földrajzi terület, ez azért nagyobb mértékben és nagyobb területet foglal át, ez alapvetően határozhatja meg a magyarság szemléletét a jövőben.
replica, Hungarian runic signs and signs found inside the Bosnian pyramids, older than Egypt pyramids. We have been studying and researching the signs of our OVAs for 30 years and use the Hungarian word our OVAs in engravings instead of runic writing, because the two are not the same. We lecture here on our experiences on the Vizico pyramids, after having visited the site a couple of times. We have realized the similarities between the signs of the 8,000 years old Neolithic Tordos, Vincana culture and that of the Bosnian Valley of the Pyramids. The oldest relics revealed until now are the signs originating from a 15 to 20,000 years old undisturbed layer on a piece of bone stick in Jankovic Cave in Bahat, north to Budapest in Pilis Mountain. Above piece of bone stick in Jankovic Cave and unharmed megalith exhibited in the museum in Hungarian-Sumerian closed. Signs on megaliths on Tashat Plateau can be found in the Carpathian Basin in Transylvania. Descriptions say that on the 10-30-meter high plateau and in the surroundings there were several hundreds of written stones, with an average size of 1.5 meter. Two unharmed megaliths are exhibited in the museum in Hungarian-Sumerian closed Transylvania szekler-hungarian. There are great many broken stones still laying around on the plateau. We controlled it personally. Based upon the parallels all through the world, it can be stated that the majority of the scripts on the stones is about 10,000 years old. Above our OVAs are plus a literature in Pilis Mountain and our OVAs are plus a literature in Vizico at the entrance of the Rand Tunnel. The Tordos Curtis culture in Transylvania was excavated by the very first female archaeologist of the world, the Hungarian Sophia Torma. From 1875 she unearthed thousands of clay discs, tablets, artifacts deriving from the Neolithic period. Most of the signs on these relics equal to those of the ancient Hungarian ROVA script used even today. Hungarian archaeologist Sophia Torma and relics with ROVA script of Sophia Torma. Above the map of Tordos Curtis Vincana culture and signs on clay potteries from Jelisapak in Serbia. Hun writing. The Chinese had written documents about the Huns as far back as 1700 BC, but we can find a great deal of information in the works of Syrian, Greek, Armenian, Iranian, and Latin historians. In the 4th century AD, the Huns had moved the headquarters of their empire into the Carpathian Basin. Our chronicles from the 12th century AD also mention the Hunnish-Hungarian identity. The Hunnish signs of writing underscore this relationship by showing a great deal of similarities with the Hungarian runic writing. General statement: Rovas is widespread in Hungary, so the 15 to 20,000 years old signs absolutely fit to be used even in our days as well, all the more because the phonemes of the Hungarian language can be put down perfectly only by this type of writing. In the 10th century, when the ancient writing of the Hungarians had to be replaced by Latin letters, 13 phonemes of their language, type, GY, New York, SZ, ZS, CS, Light, J, K, A, E, O, U, were missing from the Latin alphabet. Signs of the Bosnian pyramids. I visited Vizico for the first time in summer of 2006. My eyes were caught by one of the tableau photos, put on display on the plateau of Vasosika, Sun Pyramid. The photo depicted an arrow sign on stone. I noticed that the edges of the arrowhead were not ended in one point. For me the arrow sign was not unknown, because it's the sign of C in the ancient Hungarian ROVAs. But in this case it's ligature of 2J or J and C. See rod calendar from XIIXIII. C80. Transylvania Pic 21. Above the arrow sign and rod calendar from Transylvania XIIXIII. C80. The same year I visited the tunnel 2 times more, when I made other shocking discoveries. On the stone with the arrow I have found something even more special, the sign of a stretched bow with an arrow on it that can be seen on the before-mentioned Tart area clay tablet, 2 Pic 22, Pic 23 showing the ligature of our OVAD New York. See rod calendar from XII.XIII.C80. Transylvania. Above the sign of a stretched bow in Rand Tunnel and stretched bow in the left-hand corner on the Totter Lake AA Tart area disc. Having seen the resemblance, Friedrich Clara has immediately made comparative charts and coupled with explanation and photo of the stretched bow with arrow. In the Rand Tunnel there are a great many signs and symbols supposed to be Latin letters. Many of them Friedrich Clara identified with letters of the ancient Tordos, Vincana culture, among others Hungarian ROVH. For example, capital the identical ROVHP that has been found in Troy, Egypt, Tpia, Iran, having been widely used on the territory of Tordos, Vincana culture. These letters make us suppose that this culture comprised Visaco, too. Glozel is a French village where in 1924, in addition to other artifacts, such signs were found on ceramic plates, bones and stones, which are very similar to the letters of the ancient Tordos, Vincana, Hungarian ROVA script and the Bosnian signs. In her books Friedrich Clara drew attention to this fact in 2003 and 2005, on both occasions indicating the 111 Glozel signs in her book. Runic script is our letter of ownership to the Carpathian Basin 2003 and carved into stone, engraved into wood 2005. According to the official standpoint, the Glozel signs aged about 1800 to 2300 year. Below see Glozel signs. Singing women. Probably the goddess was excavated near Sarajevo, Bosnia. It is part of amazing Bosnian culture ceramics 5500 to 4000 BC. The pottery was painted and has been often compared to Mycenae. The figurines show also very interesting hairstyles. Significant is that the early Bosnian pottery is 2000 years older. Bosnian culture is connected to the Bosnian pyramids. Same inscription has been found on the ceramics and on the megaliths in the underground tunnels underneath the pyramid. The most important deities at the time were god of the sun and Mother Earth. Bosnian pyramids were surrounded with large Bosnian culture settlements. Popolis near Visaco is being considered the largest city of Megalithic with 3,000 to 4,000 inhabitants, with network of smaller settlements in the Visaco Valley had about 15,000 inhabitants at the time. Origins. Main article, Origin of the sea fleas. The origin of the sea fleas has been much debated. It is now generally accepted that they are descendants of Hungarians, or of Magyarized Turkic peoples transplanted to the eastern Carpathians to guard the frontier, their name meaning frontier guards. The sea fleas have historically claimed descent from Attila's Huns. The 13th century chronicler Simon of Keza also claimed that the sea flea people descended from Huns who lived in the mountainous lands prior to the Hungarian conquest. Exhibit 6, the clay tablets of also Tonderlake AA. Early scholars in the middle of the 19th century, while deciphering Sumerian writings, recognized that the Sumerians spoke an agglutinated language similar to Hungarian. Hundreds of Sumerian words still exist in the Hungarian language today. The French scholar, François Runic, spent some time in Hungary in order to achieve a better understanding of the Hungarian language. Some believe the English scholar, the H. Sayce, did the same. The fact is, Hungarian proved to be a useful tool in deciphering the ancient Sumerian language. When deciphering the Sumerian cuneiforms, each of the two pioneers, in the mid-19th century, Englishman Henry C. Rawlinson and Frenchman Jules Haupert, had Hungarian co-workers, Vincent Rone and Florian Matthias respectively. No wonder that, presently as in the past, some believe that the Hungarian and the Sumerian languages are closely related. Others, nevertheless, continue to debate the matter. Linguistic evidence of the Sumerian Scythian origins of the Magyar-Hungarian nation. In the case of the Finns, it seems apparent that the Magyar language moved north from the Carpathian Basin to northern Europe, which is corroborated by the fact that not only the Finnish spoken language is similar to Magyar, but the Viking runes also seem to have been derived from the much older Magyar runes in the Carpathian Basin because of the similarities between the two. The date of Bosnian pyramids somewhere around 35,000 BC puts them even earlier than the Egyptian and Sumerian cultures. The artifacts found contain szekler Hungarian writing. This can only mean that the antecedents to most languages is the Hungarian-Sumerian szekler runic writing, which is connected to the Vincana culture and the Glozel artifacts in France. This is possibly the paleo-sanskrit that Kurt Schildmann talked about, linking the worldwide culture to a worldwide language. Not only that, but there seems to be much evidence that the Megalithic builders who also ruled over humanity were the elongated skull peoples found throughout almost every civilization around the world. These ancient peoples worshipped the elongated skull rulers as gods, and on almost every continent is found head-binding cranial deformation practices to emulate the gods. Although controversial, it seems that the classic great alien is being depicted in artwork through all these cultures. The alien-mayan artifacts especially contain depictions that chronicle an interspecies event. The most elongated skulls appear to have the most alien DNA, successive breeding with human creating a more human-like appearance. Is this the case? Or a more down-to-earth explanation that is explained by whistleblower Karen Hudes? She claims that another species of human has ruled over humanity since before the last ice age. If so, are we still being ruled by this megalithic building civilization that was at one time the one world language? Karen, the ones, at the very core, that is pulling the strings, is a different species. They're not the human race. They're called Homo sapiens. Karen, they have been unearthed, together with humanity since before this ice age. Karen, the reason I know about this is because I was trying to help out the movie producer, who couldn't get his movie made that was called The Banksters Made Off with America. His name was Edward. He introduced me to his network of whistleblowers. Karen, one of the people in that network is a neurologist who went to Yale Medical School and was retired. He was trying to find out what was at the very core of this corruption. Interviewer, you mentioned this different species of human. Karen, no, they're not human. They're so distinct from humans that if they were to mate with humans their offspring would not be fertile. Interviewer, are you speaking of the biblical Nephilim, an entity that people have discussed and tried to understand for a millennia? That is the race of offspring of humans and the fallen angels are from. Are these the same? Karen, no, these are not angels. These are not spiritual. Interviewer, well, the Nephilim themselves were the offspring of the fallen angels and humanity. Are these the same? Karen, they are not fallen angels. They are critters. Karen, I am talking about a large skull. Interviewer, the elongated skull, the elongated cranium. Karen, some are in Peru, some are elongated. Interviewer, so you are saying that this specific species of individuals is occupying the Vatican and functioning through the Jesuit order? Karen, yes, but they're also working in the banks in Portugal. For species of Homo you've never heard of. Part 2. The history of anthropology is littered with many now defunct hominid species that no longer have a place in the human family tree. By Aaron Wayman, Smithsonian.com, December 10, 2012. Homo sapiens. In the early 1910s, two farmers stumbled across hominid fossils, including bits of skull, near Boskop, South Africa. The bones were passed around to many anatomists, including Raymond Dart, who later discovered the first Australopithecus fossil, before ending up in the hands of paleontologist Robert Broom. Broom estimated the skull a whopping 1,980 cubic centimeters. The typical modern person's brain is around 1,400 cubic centimeters. Broom determined that the skull should be called H. capensis, also known as Boskop man. Other specimens from South Africa were added to the species, and some scientists became convinced southern Africa was once home to a race of big-brained, small-faced people. But by the 1950s, scientists were questioning the legitimacy of H. capensis. One problem was that the thickness of the original skull made it difficult to estimate the true brain size. And even if it were 1,980 cubic centimeters, that's still within the normal range of variation for modern people's brains, anthropologist blogger John Hawkes explained in 2008. Another problem, Hawkes pointed out, was that scientists were preferentially choosing larger skulls to include H. capensis while ignoring smaller skulls that were found in association with the bigger specimens. Today, fossils once classified as H. capensis are considered members of H. sapiens. Osteological evaluation of 4 elongated skulls from Paracas, Peru. By Aaron Judkins, Ph.D. Consulting archaeologist. Specimen number 2, adult, elongated skull, unknown age. Observations: 1 intact cranium, intact maxillae, intact mandible, not shown. The skull is in good condition. The general shape of the skull is markedly elongated. In the antero-posterior plane has a very high forehead, and a deeply sloping parieto-occipital region. The extracranial morphology of the individual cranial bones is within normal limits. The foramen magnum is unusually large and the occipital condyles are very large and somewhat elevated, although the general morphology of the individual visible cranial bones is within normal limits. The mandible is robust, not shown. The coronal suture is clearly visible with partial fusion noted. The sagittal suture is absent. Skull measurements were conducted using both straight and elliptical calipers. The hair is red auburn colored, which is mostly non-intact. This made evaluation of skull very easy to assess. The skull is achromatic with no trepanation noted. Cranial volume was measured using the technique already described above. General observations: 1. Intact cranium, intact maxillae, intact mandible, not shown. The skull is in good condition. The general shape of the skull is markedly elongated, in the antero-posterior plane, has a very high forehead, and a deeply sloping parieto-occipital region. The extracranial morphology of the individual cranial bones is within normal limits. The foramen magnum is unusually large and the occipital condyles are very large and somewhat elevated, although the general morphology of the individual visible cranial bones is within normal limits. Result: cranial volume is 2,390 cm3. Normal range: 1,350 to 1,750 cm3 with 1,450 cm3 being average. Conclusion: the cranial volume is much larger and outside normal parameters. Summary: 1. Adult, probably male although sex and age are not definitively determined. 2. Cranial volume is much larger than expected and outside of normal parameters. Unknown etiology. 3. Absence of the sagittal suture cannot rule out cranial synostosis with marked polycocephaly. 4. The skull appears to possibly share a few similar Polynesian traits, but this is inconclusive at this time. 5. The probability of tabulate modeling, the most common type of cradle boarding practiced by the Paracas culture, should not be ruled out. Differential diagnosis should include cultural practices by the Paracas culture. The Book of Enoch, the prophet, an apocryphal production, supposed for ages to have been lost, but discovered at the close of the last century in Abyssinia, now first translated from an Ethiopic MS in the Bodleian Library. By Richard Lawrence, LLD, Archbishop of Cashel. Preliminary dissertation. And I heard from them everything, and I understood what I saw. After this followed the history of the angels, of their having descended from heaven, and produced giants with the daughters of men, of their having instructed these in the arts of war and peace, and luxury. These same gods that possibly gave us civilization and language and culture, Dagon of the Canaanites, Pideli, Hermes Trismegistus, were they elongated skull teachers? Hermes Trismegistus. So the gods will depart from mankind, the grievous thing. And only evil angel will remain, who will mingle with men, and drive the poor wretches by main force into all manner of reckless crime, into wars, and robberies, and frauds, and all things hostile to the nature of the soul. Darkness will be preferred to light, and death will be thought more profitable than life. The pious will be deemed insane, and the impious wise. The madman will be thought a brave man, and the wicked will be esteemed as good. AD 150 to 270.